And for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Kayla. Go ahead.
I get elected?
Ladies first.
I'm going to get close for a few minutes. Then I'm not in the way, right?
At least hear it. Okay, so you're going to raise your right hand and then repeat after me. I state your name,
Mary Larson,
a planning commission appointee of the city of Baldwin,
a planning commission appointee of the city of Baldwin,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully perform the duties of my appointed office,
that I will faithfully perform the duties of my appointed office,
and I will support and honor to the best of my ability
and I will support and honor to the best of my
the
ability
Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the state of Minnesota,
the Constitution of the state of Minnesota,
all applicable laws of the state of Minnesota,
all applicable laws of the state of Minnesota,
Sherburne County,
Sherburne County,
the city of Baldwin,
the city of Baldwin,
as well as the bylaws, beliefs, vision, mission, policies, procedures, code of ethics, and code of conduct
As well as.
yeah. Okay.
start there.
As well as the bylaws, beliefs, vision, mission, policies, procedures, code of ethics, and code of conduct of the City of Baldwin Planning Commission.
I further affirm through this oath
I further affirm through this oath
that I will faithfully perform the duties of this public trust in a fair,
that I will faithfully perform the duties of this public trust in a fair,
equitable, and ethical manner befitting the dignity and responsibilities of the office.
equitable, and ethical manner befitting the dignity and responsibilities of the office.
I additionally swear
I additionally swear
that I will not knowingly receive,
that I will not knowingly receive,
directly or indirectly,
directly or indirectly,
any money or other valuable thing
any money or other valuable thing
for the performance or non-performance of any act or duty
for the performance or non-performance of any act or duty
pertaining to my office,
pertaining to my office,
other than the compensation allowed by law.
other than the compensation allowed by law.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was your guinea pig.
Right.
All right, raise your
Okay.
right hand and repeat after me. I state your name,
Bruce West,
Planning Commission appointee of the city of Baldwin,
a planning commission appointee of the city of Baldwin,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully perform the duties of my appointed office
that I will faithfully perform the duties of my appointed office
and will support and honor to the best of my ability
and will support and honor to the best of my ability
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the United States, Constitution of the state of Minnesota,
all applicable laws of the state of Minnesota,
all applicable laws of the state of Minnesota,
Sherburne County,
Sherburne County,
the city of Baldwin,
the city of Baldwin,
as well as the bylaws, beliefs, vision, mission, policies, procedures, code of ethics, and code of conduct
as well as the bylaws, beliefs, vision, mission, policies, procedures, code of ethics, and code of conduct of the city of Baldwin Planning Commission.
I further affirm through this oath
I further affirm through this oath
that I will faithfully perform the duties
that I will faithfully perform the duties
of this public trust in a fair,
of this public trust in a fair,
equitable, and ethical manner,
equitable, and ethical manner,
befitting the dignity and responsibilities of the office.
befitting the dignity and responsibilities of the office.
I additionally swear
I additionally swear
that I will not knowingly receive,
that I will not knowingly receive,
directly or indirectly,
directly or indirectly,
any money or other valuable thing
any money or other valuable thing
for the performance or non-performance
for the performance or non-performance
of any act or duty pertaining to my office,
of any act or duty pertaining to my office,
other than the compensation allowed by law.
other than the compensation allowed by law.
You hereby bequeath your firstborn.
To the mayor. To the mayor.
Okay. Roll call. Commissioner Miller,
Here.
nice to have you here. Commissioner Barnes,
Here.
Mr. Sofferin,
Here.
Newland,
Here.
Commissioner West,
Here?
Commissioner Larson. Sorry.
Okay.
We're also joined by another one of our mayors,
I'm here.
our planner, Mr. Lick.
Present.
Okay, counting for everybody. Kayla? Okay. Everybody turn their claim forms to Kayla. Showed both of them how to do it. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, that takes us to B, election of officers. We have one thing on topic for this, and that is vice chair. Kayla.
I will now open nominations for vice chair. Patty.
Nominate Commissioner Barnes.
Commissioner Barnes, awesome. Okay, is there any other nominations? Any other nominations? Any other nominations?
You're thrown right into the.
Okay, Commissioner Miller nominated Commissioner Barnes. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second, awesome. All in favor?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnes, do you accept vice chair position?
I accept.
Awesome.
Thank you, Kayla. You're welcome. Okay, C, approval of the agenda. Anyone have anything they would like to add or change regarding tonight's agenda? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to approve as is.
I'll make the motion to approve the agenda.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, approved as is. D, approval of the meeting minutes from our planning meeting, our special meeting that was October 15th, 2025. Anything in there anybody has looked at that is incorrect? Spelling errors, punctuation errors? Patty, on your way out, give us a few.
No, there is not.
Good.
Good job, Kayla. Look at that.
She's got you whipped into shape.
Yeah. If nothing is found, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Make the motion to approve the minutes as read.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Do we have a second? Any more discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, approved. The approval of the meeting minutes from our planning meeting, the special meeting on October 15th of 2025. Okay, the meat of the meeting tonight is new business. We have two things under there. The first one is the Planning Commission training and discussion. Time to turn over to Mr. Lick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have to say, it's kind of disappointing that in the minutes, there were no corrections, but. Anyway, so this is like the first time I've ever seen this happen where almost the entire planning commission turned over within about 3 months. So, thankfully, we still have the chairman and Ms. Miller here this evening to help. This is intended to be a open discussion. I don't want to have to listen to myself talk all night, and I'm sure you don't either. So as we're going through this, please stop me, ask questions, discussion amongst yourselves, etc. So what are you doing here? Your role is to advise the planning or the city council on land use matters. And that typically involves these applications that either fall under zoning or subdivision. So you'll get applications for site and building plan review for commercial and industrial buildings. You'll have applications for conditional use permits. These are uses listed in the zoning ordinance that come with certain standards that apply to them that need to be reviewed by the planning commission. Interim use permits are the same, allowed by the zoning ordinance, subject to special conditions, but which can be sunsetted. And variances, which are deviations from the standards of the zoning ordinance, handled on a case-by-case basis. You'll also deal with subdivision, so a sketch plan, basically a paper napkin drawing of what someone wants to do for informal discussion and feedback as to their proposal. Preliminary plat, which is the subdivision designed to develop property into multiple lots. And then the final plat doesn't typically come through the planning commission, but that's the final step in the subdivision process, and we'll go through those in detail.
Question?
Yep.
You had said, for the first one, site and building plan review, you had specified industrial.
Commercial and industrial only, correct.
Okay, so it's just those,
Yep.
nothing residential, just those two, okay.
Typically, cities will set up townhouses or multiple family to be reviewed by the planning commission. But since Baldwin doesn't have that, you're not gonna see it. And some cities go so far as to review house plans for each individual lot. You're not gonna want to do that.
That's why I was asking is.
Yeah, it gets a little further down the line of, dictating things that isn't necessarily within the scope of a zoning ordinance, that cities that do that. So we try and avoid that wherever possible.
Ben, would you prefer if we ask questions on the page, or you want us to say?
No, go ahead and ask.
Just one comment, the variances, we have talked about this in the past. Variances, we stick to them. Basically, it has to be a need. A lot of people come in, they want to do something, and even though it totally makes sense and you want to approve it, it has to be a need to. Elk Lake, we get a real lot of them because of the irregular lots, the small lots, someone's going to move their septic. Well, pretty much have to approve it because they need to have their septic upgraded, so stuff like that. But the variances, we've kept it to the point, and sometimes it's hard when someone has a very good reason for wanting to do it. Can't, so we can't allow it unless it's an absolute. So variances do come across, we have to look at them that way.
Can I ask a question? How many times does somebody come in after the fact asking for that variance, where they've done something and then it's against, one of the ordinances, one of the, do they come in and now they're gonna ask for forgiveness, basically? Is it
That's
common or
pretty,
not?
no, that's pretty rare.
Okay? Okay, that's a good thing.
Yep, because most of the time when they want to do something, they'll need at least a building permit anyway, so we've had it where someone's applied to put a porch on a house on a lake, and the important thing is when it goes to the building official, it also goes to engineering and to myself, so that I look at it and go, oh, wait a minute, we gotta flag this, because now they're moving closer to the lake, they'd need a variance first, so that we're picking that up. I have seen it where people have done things like, in another city, the house was built at the setback line, and after the fact, they added a porch. And the building official happened to go by and see the porch going on, so not only did they not get a building permit, they didn't get the variance. The city actually made them tear it off, because it was an after-the-fact variance that, as the chair said, it was a want, not a need, so.
Or the neighbor probably called in because it encroached on
Yeah,
theirs.
this was one staff actually caught, so.
Okay, thank you.
So the other thing that kind of goes with that is, where does the planning commission fit into this process? So usually if somebody has a piece of property that they want to do something with, the first thing they do is they call staff and say, I have this property, this is what I want to do. Can I do it? What do I have to do for that? So we'll have meetings with them if it's a subdivision. Normally we meet with them at least once ahead of time to see their plans at a preliminary level to make sure they're on the right direction and there isn't going to be any red flags. Our goal with that is that when it comes to the planning commission, we want it to conform to all the ordinances so that it kind of expedites the review process, that there aren't, this lot doesn't meet these requirements, so what are we looking at here? So most applications, once they go through a city staff review, will come here to planning commission. Every application except for the site and building plan review does require public hearing, which is when notice is sent to surrounding property owners within 350 feet. That distance is set by statute, so that we're consistent with how other cities are supposed to be doing that. Some cities go more than that. I've found that just creates problems because the person at 520 feet is gonna be like, well, why didn't you send it to me? You have to draw a line somewhere, and as long as the state said this is where the line is, let's just use that line. Then, once the planning commission's held the public hearing or reviewed the application, you make a recommendation to the city council. City council makes the final decision. So I make a recommendation to you, you recommend to city council decides. Typically, the city council does not take additional public comment at their meeting regarding development applications. The intent is that you serve as kind of the clearinghouse for the council. You're the ones taking in all the information, answering questions, and then using that as the record of decision that goes forward to the council. So they're not going to repeat the same discussion that you had here at the planning commission. They're going to look at everything that you discussed and then make their decision in finality. And then the final step is staff usually has conditions of approval that we have to deal with, or that building permit review. Same thing on the subdivision side, it goes preliminary plat, staff review, public hearing, council action, and then start moving dirt. So how are we making our decisions? So this is kind of the tools that the planning commission has. The first is the comprehensive plan. Think of that as the high level vision of the city today and where it's going in the future. You can think of land development as basically a three-way partnership. You have a developer that wants to construct something or subdivide something. You have a landowner that wants to sell their property for that development. And then you have the city that provides infrastructure to allow for that development to happen. The need for the comprehensive plan is basically to make sure that the infrastructure that's being provided is in alignment with the market, in an alignment with where the development's going, so that process can all happen as a transaction. We use that also then to manage how growth happens. So if we're saying the city can be divided into 2.5 acre lots, well, there also needs to be a street to that property that's capable of handling the traffic that's going to come. So if somebody comes in and wants to divide something and it's served off a gravel street, that's not adequate. And so until that road is either improved by the developer or by the city through its capital improvement plan, that development can't happen. This is one of the areas where we'll talk about the Planning Commission deals with legislative actions and judicial actions. So legislative actions is when you're establishing policy for the city. Baldwin's policy is that single-family residential will be the only form of residential development, for example. And then where that residential development occurs, or what areas will be reserved for commercial and industrial. When you get into reviewing applications like conditional use permits and zoning ordinance, those are judicial decisions. You have standards in the zoning ordinance and you have criteria, and you're evaluating or judging an application based on those standards and criteria. So the components of the comprehensive plan, usually we start with the ground as it is today in a natural state, and then you're going to build on it. So then once you have the natural environment, you kind of sort out the land, the wetlands, the rivers, ponds, lakes, bad soils, etc. What land uses can you place in what locations? Once you kind of have the land use decided, then there's systems that go along with that that support development. So your transportation plan, that's where we designate roadways within the city to handle higher volumes of traffic. Obviously 169 being the highest volume, and then county roads being the next tier down. And then from that, you'll have streets that kind of border neighborhoods. Those are called collector streets, and the intent is to take traffic from the neighborhoods, collect it, and then move it out towards the higher capacity roadways so that there's kind of a functional relationship of streets within the city. Sewer and water from a standpoint in Baldwin is basically making sure that there's adequate space for septic and well, and that those are maintained in accordance with statute, and then obviously stormwater management. Those are fairly regulated by the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. The underlying rule is basically you can't generate more runoff than you did before development. So it's called Post equals pre-development, essentially. So that's all, those are mainly all engineering plans. The one I kind of skipped over was parks and trails. When we get into the subdivision ordinance, the city has the opportunity to look at requiring land from developers to be dedicated to the city to be developed for parks. And so typically what will happen as an element of your comprehensive plan is you define how much land is needed for the city in parkland, general areas where that should be, and how the city would look to assemble property in those areas and then develop it. In addition to either taking land, the city can have a decision point and choose to accept a cash fee equivalent of that land value. So that money's all put into a fund that can only be used to develop or acquire and develop new park facilities. You can't, for instance, use it to replace the playset at Young Park. Any questions? So then from the comprehensive plan being the high level view, now you get down into the details through the zoning ordinance. The goal is basically to implement what you set out in the comprehensive plan by establishing the allowed land uses and performance standards that go with those. Basically, you're regulating what's happening on the property and what can be constructed. Again, amendments are when you establish the initial ordinance, that's a legislative action, so you're setting policy. Lot size in Baldwin shall be 2.5 acres. That's a decision here that's unique to Baldwin and may not apply in other communities. Those amendments also take the form of a zoning map amendment. So if, say, your property is zoned residential and you want to change it to commercial, you request an amendment, and that's also legislative action where the Planning Commission and Council are going to decide if that's an appropriate action consistent with the community vision.
As an example, that'd be our addition of R2.
Yep.
Okay.
So then you're saying now we're gonna have two types of residential. We're gonna have large lot rural parcels, we're gonna have platted subdivisions. And that's the trick with that two zoning classification thing is the legislative action of establishing that R2 district. Because if a property is zoned R1 district and the R1 district allows 2.5 acres, and someone comes in and proposes a 2.5 acre lot subdivision, the city has very little flexibility to say no. If they're meeting all the requirements, that was, the Planning Commission had the Northland Ponds development came in where all the property owners on adjacent 5 acre pieces came in and said, this is way too dense, this doesn't fit with our area. Well, that's not one of the criteria. The criteria are the lots at least 2.5 acres and 200 feet wide. And they all were. There was no way to say no to that. Now, with having a zoning map change attached to this, the Planning Commission could actually say, this area is surrounded by 5 acre lots. Having these half-sized lots in that area doesn't fit, in our opinion, and you can not make that change or encourage the developer to make changes to their plan in order to get that approval. Other questions? All right. So then typically the way the zoning ordinance is broken down, each zoning district lists permitted uses, which are, people used to say it's allowed by right or by entitlement, but I had an attorney doing one of these trainings saying, well, that's not correct because they still have to comply with all the standards of the zoning ordinance. So they're permitted to do the use provided they comply with the zoning ordinance. But then we have conditional and interim use permits. And again, these are specific to a district. So for example, animal kennels comes up here as a interim use, but it could be a conditional use as well. So in the zoning ordinance, it says in the R1 district, kennels as a conditional or interim use, and then you look and there's a list of standards that go along with it. And the applicant needs to demonstrate to the Planning Commission and Council that they're complying with those conditions.
Question, because so you were mentioning if a development comes in and it matches the zoning, like you say, that was they have a right to do it. It meets all of that. Do those still come in front of Planning Commission for?
Yes.
Okay, because I know other
any
cities,
plat will, yeah.
any plat will. I know others, if it's a if it's a established property and they're just developing that property and there's no plat changes,
Right.
it's just a site development that meets our zoning, that can be a staff approval?
So here in Baldwin, it would be staff approval for a house. You know, if someone there's a existing subdivision and someone's gonna
Okay.
build on a vacant lot,
Yep.
they just need a building permit.
For a house.
For a
yep.
house, for a
Okay.
commercial or industrial, it will still come through the planning commission for site and building plan review.
Okay,
And for the most part, it's done more for information purposes, so that the planning commission's aware of what's going on and sees the commercial development happening.
okay.
For example, the Rough Start Rescue that was just here last month,
Yep.
you know, that came to the planning commission because they were expanding on an existing building on an existing lot, and through the zoning ordinance, we require site and building plan review for that.
Okay.
That was based on it being a commercial.
Yep. So the reason we set up these uses as conditional or interim uses is because there's potential that whatever the activity is may cause compatibility problems with surrounding properties, or it may create additional impacts to infrastructure. So in the case of kennels, you want to make sure there's separation between adjacent uses in case there's barking dogs. You want to know how they're handling the dogs during the day or night. You want to know that there's waste control, et cetera. Another example of something that's always a conditional use is a convenience gas station. Because you have compatibility issues with lights and noise. You also have traffic issues. You know, how you want to make sure that cars can get in and out effectively, make sure there's a way for a fuel truck to get in and out without causing any congestion on the adjacent street. So with those applications, it is possible for the planning commission to add conditions to that. Typically, what we will do is add the conditions that are listed under each of the respective uses that they must comply with this, but another example would be convenience gas. You can limit the hours of operation. This specific location is too close to this home to allow these homes to allow 24-hour operation, so they have to stop at 10 o'clock, et cetera. What the key is that any conditions need to be directly related to an impact that the use is causing. You can't say, for example, the one we always typically use is like a gravel pit, where you would direct that they have to use certain routes to and from the pit to a major roadway, so that they're not busting up all the adjacent streets. So you can do that, and you could require improvements to that road to accommodate that. But you can't then say, well, you also have to pave this other street that's coming from the other direction, because it's not related to that impact. You have to tie the two together, otherwise it's unreasonable. The other thing is, the expectation is, even though it's listed as a conditional use or an interim use, and it comes to the planning commission for review, and there's the chance for the public to come in and speak, but is often not understood is that the applicant, if they can demonstrate that they meet all the conditions and can exist compatibly, they do have an expectation that their request will be approved. The planning commission just can't, we don't like you, the neighborhood is against this, so we're not gonna, if they've demonstrated that they meet these conditions, then it should be approved. Otherwise, you can be challenged. The main distinction, again, conditional use permits and interim use permits, is interim use permits are for a set period of time. They can be sunsetted, which is important distinction. The property owner does have to agree to it, so on the bottom of the permit approved by the council, there's a space for them to sign that they are agreeing to this, and then that's recorded against the property as a record. And we typically either do it as a specific date in time where the use would be terminated by, or an event. So for example, gravel permit, again, would be, okay, you've excavated all this material, now your permit's expired. Now you can't continue that type of activity on this property. The idea with this is maybe something changes over time, that this use, while it's appropriate now, 10 years, maybe it's not going to be, because the area is going to change in character. The other example that we use interim use permits a lot for is, for example, outdoor storage at an industrial use. So you give one company the ability to store materials and equipment outside. That company sells the property, they change businesses, now something else moves in there. Well, did all the provisions you put in place to screen that from view, does it adequately cover what's there now? Or did that change? You know, did we go from storing lumber at grade level to drilling equipment that's extra tall? And what changed in circumstances? So by terminating the interim use permit, that gives the city the ability to reconsider whether the use is still compatible at that location.
As an example, recently, last couple of months, we approved a boat operation off the lake. So I believe would that have been
It's an interim use.
interim use with the provision that if they sold it, it would stop at that point?
Right. So if it's just down the road here, some guy wanted to be able to sell 3 or 4 boats at the end of his driveway. Planning Commission approved it, and one of the standard termination requirements is that if the property is sold, that interim use permit ceases. So somebody else just can't move in and start doing the same thing. Mr. West?
Can an interim use permit when the time is up, can that become a conditional use permit with some stipulations?
So.
Can it turn from one to another?
No. If you look at the zoning district section, it lists conditional uses
Okay.
and it lists interim uses.
Okay.
If you approve an interim use permit and, for example, it terminates for whatever reason, the new property owner, whoever has it, they can reapply for it, or they can apply for an extension.
Okay.
Every IUP.
Correct. Yep, that's required by statute. So then variances, and the chair touched on this, this is an exception to the zoning ordinance requirement. As a planner, we don't like these because zoning is supposed to be uniform. The idea is you're putting the same standards and applying it to every property. It used to be that there was the threshold for approval of variances called undue hardship. Basically, you had to prove that the application of a standard in the zoning ordinance prohibited any reasonable use of the property. Not that you couldn't build a house as big as you wanted to on the property. No, you couldn't build a house on the property. And they lessened that to a standard called practical difficulties, whereby it's a little more flexible that, gee, I'd like to have this, but because of this requirement, I'm really having trouble doing it. For the most part, the way Baldwin has operated is pretty much the old model, that there has to be something unique to the property. It has to be a physical condition related to the property, not necessarily a structure somebody built on the property or a situation where the ordinance doesn't allow, again, maybe a detached building or as big of a building as you want, or a deck where you want it. You have your property and the envelope to work within it, and that's what you're allowed to do. Otherwise, if you create an exception for someone else, you know, you're creating potential exception for other people as well. We like to talk about not establishing precedent through zoning ordinance variances. So if you do find a situation where the same request keeps coming up and the planning commission's inclined to approve it or agree with the request, then what you do is you look at the ordinance and say, what's the matter? Why are we getting this question, and how should we change it to avoid this issue? So had at least one person go through the variance process. We do, as the chair said, get a lot of variance applications on lots along the lakes because these were all platted in the 50s before there were such things as zoning, and before the state put in place shoreline management rules in the 80s. So there's no way in heck that any of those lots meet any of those standards. And you know,
Variances, sorry.
Do a lot of those refer to setbacks? Is that why?
yep, the lots are too small based on the lot standards for lakes are smaller than Baldwin's minimum zoning standards, but these don't even meet that. And the smallest ones I think are 40,000 square feet, and a lot of these lots are under 10,000 square feet. They don't meet the width, and then it'll be setback variances and impervious surface. So what you do is try and accommodate, reasonable use of the property within the confines of its lot. The planning commission has looked at requests, for side yard setbacks. And the discussion becomes, well, is there still enough space between the lot that you have access down either side of the house? And, okay, yeah, you've got enough space for 2 cars in the garage, or on the lot. Do we really need a 3-car garage on this lot? Because it's not big enough. And then there is flexibility built into the ordinance that you can basically along the lot, or along the lake shore, draw a line between existing homes to allow homes to basically move up to an average point. So the city has been very accommodating on variances in that area. That was one of the reasons that Baldwin sought to take over planning and zoning, because Sherburne County had a much more black and white view of things and wasn't willing to work with property owners, recognizing the inherent problems with these lots, so.
Chair, as it is, especially around Sandy Lake and some of the lakes, it's necessary to have 2 lots, own 2 lots, because they're so small to even be built. So, have demolitions of homes or those types of things that happen, whatever, those are so small that we have to put 2 together, or they have to own 2 in order to do anything.
Yeah, there's really only so much you can do with some of these lots that it becomes impossible without combining.
Are a lot of those lots only, 50, 60 feet wide then?
Yep. I think we've seen some that are 40.
Oh, my God. I
So,
didn't think they were that small.
so we don't approve like trailers going on those lots then?
So someone can put a trailer on a lot, but they have to put it on a foundation and it has to meet minimum dimensions. So there's provisions in the zoning ordinance that basically prohibit single wide mobile homes from being dropped on a lot. You can't just move an RV onto a lot and live in it. The zoning ordinance also prohibits tiny homes, or, they had the medical accessory dwellings came up a couple of years ago through the legislature. But fortunately, they put a provision in the ordinance that said, well, cities can opt out of allowing those, so that you can't just pull something into your driveway. And especially in a city where you don't have sewer and water utilities, how's all of this being handled? It was the legislature's kind of gotten out of control with trying to legislate zoning things when they don't understand zoning and development. So it's been a bit of an issue. So this triangle was put together with an attorney that he's since retired, but he put this together probably in the 70s maybe. And it's a decision pyramid showing the city's discretion. You have the most discretion in making decisions in the green area, and as you go up the pyramid, it gets to be less and less. I don't know that, I've never agreed with where he puts variances, but though that should be further in the green, because again, you're giving flexibility. It's judicial, but it should be a hard case to sell. And plats and subdivisions should be closer to the red area, but.
So the green is legislative, yellow is.
Yellow and red are judicial. Yep. So, variances and conditional and interim use permits, you're looking not only at standards, but there are criteria. And I'll show you these. So here's the criteria for conditional and interim use permits. So, each time one of these applications comes through, we will draft findings of fact for the planning commission to consider. And we'll have a finding for each one of these points. And so it's important that you review that before the meeting, so that if there's any question about what the finding is going forward, that it's raised and discussed at the meeting. But so these are where, versus a site plan review where you're basically, does this building meet the site setbacks? This is where there's some flexibility. Is the conditional use consistent with the comprehensive plan? Is it going to be compatible with surrounding land uses? For example, in the case of a kennel, yes, they meet the 500 foot setback from all adjacent homes, but the area is so densely populated with homes that it's bound to cause impacts in some way. This is one that's unique to, the other thing I should say is, so Baldwin zoning ordinance isn't unique to Baldwin. It was basically, we took Sherburne County's ordinance and made it Baldwin's to kind of expeditiously get a regulation in place as part of the incorporation process. So some of what the planning commission has been working on is revising these to reflect more Baldwin-specific policies, and some of these may change over time. Uses conformity with all the standards of the ordinance, traffic generation in relation to the road serving the property. There's some more. And then whether it can be accommodated within existing service and facilities. So each one of those does allow some opinion of the planning commission as to whether the use complies with that.
Question. So this is our ordinance that we're looking at. And you say that the committee has worked on some of this already. How far along have you guys gotten on the comprehensive as far as taking Sherburne's, trying to change it to Baldwin specific?
We made a couple immediate changes. One of the things that kind of bugged the town board and the planning commission under the Sherburne County ordinance was accessory buildings. They had this artificial structure limit that no building could be larger than 1,800 square feet, even if you had much more property. So the planning commission initially, before incorporation, when the regulations still had to be consistent with Sherburne County, they basically were approving variances on a finding that, well, this is just inefficient. And did it for 2 or 3 people, recognizing they were going to change the ordinance after Baldwin became a city. So now the regulation allows basically accessory buildings up to 4%. The other issue that you raised was the storage containers. So Sherburne County's regulations were that under 10 acres, you weren't allowed to have them. Now, as a city, Baldwin can look at that issue and decide for itself, yeah, you could have a shipping container as an accessory building, but you got to paint it, or you got to side it, or put it
Under these conditions?
Yeah, define how it's appropriate in Baldwin. And then there's just, those are general standards, and I think I've got the variance ones here. Yep. So, oops. So again, very similar, variance, consistent comprehensive plan. Variances need to be consistent with the intent of the ordinance. So if the intent of a setback is to maintain separation from adjacent structures, you want to ensure that, okay, we're going to reduce the setback for this, but is there still adequate separation? That's where that discussion has come in play on the lake lots to make sure you can still get from the front yard to the lakeside. It's due to situations not created by the landowner. It always says landowner, but I have always taken that to mean created by a person. So just because someone built the house in a certain location and now somebody wants, the subsequent owner wants to add on to it, well, I can't build on because this person put the house on this portion of the lot. Well, that's not the ordinance's problem. That somebody made the decision to build the house where it did, which precluded certain actions in the future. Granting of the variance will not alter the character of the neighborhood. It's the minimum variance needed to eliminate the difficulty. That falls into, well, you know, we have this lake lot and it's squeezed between the lake setback and the street setback, and we're going to need a variance somehow. Well, what's reasonable? You know, do you go all the way out to the street, or do you go all the way to the lake? No, there's got to be a minimum variance one way or the other to allow a use of the property. This is a Sherburne County unique one, potential to impact natural resources, allow a lesser degree of flood protection. The other thing is you can't, by state law, approve a variance to allow a use not allowed by the zoning ordinance. So, for example, in a residential zoning district, someone can't come in and request a variance to build a gas station, because that's allowing a use not allowed by that's a use variance not allowed by the zoning ordinance. The only relief from that is to amend the ordinance, basically.
Since we're at that point, as far as the natural resources, I'm gonna go dig a little deep on this one. Are we affected by the T. Roosevelt Memorial Preservation Act? As far as a city, you're supposed to keep certain amount of wetland or natural resources protected. Do we fall under that law?
No. We have to follow the Wetland Conservation Act. We have to follow state statute regarding the Rum River. We have to follow MPCA rules regarding stormwater management.
Okay.
All right, so this gets into, you've had the public hearing and now the planning commission's gonna make its decision. So there'll be this document either in the packet or attached to my report that basically, here's the facts of the application. Here's those criteria and potential findings. And the reason we do this is because if for whatever reason an application goes from the planning commission to the council and gets denied, and the applicant then turns around and appeals to the council first, and then the council again says no, and then they sue the city, that's the first thing the courts are gonna look at, is what did the planning commission look at in making its decision or recommendation? So the important thing is that you're looking at them when you vote on them. So that's why we pre-write them in order to get them in front of you and allow you to make a decision. And then the other thing is they have to be done at the same time you're making your decision. You know, we can't have the planning commission say, yeah, we're gonna deny it, and planner go off and write some things and show it to the council. It needs to be in front of you as the basis of your decision. Yeah, that's that.
Along that line of, it has to be in front of you. I think when we did the dog kennel, we had the situation where we said, you know, they threw some information in it late in the game that changed the parking. We had the statement in there that you're submitting this late and upon a review of whatever they have to follow based on, but it gives us that window of late information, we get the chance to review it.
Yep, and that goes back to, you're gonna make a decision, but you can still attach conditions to it. So the planning commission doesn't necessarily need to see it in final form. You just need to be able to say, well, we're approving this. They do have to meet the parking requirement, so we're gonna include a condition that they must provide a site plan subject to the zoning administrator's approval that complies with the parking requirement. That gets checked going through.
Sheriff, I can, also too, what you'll notice, like with me as the liaison to the council, along the lines of, you know, if anything was contested and that kind of thing, you all know me fairly well enough to know that I can bloviate with the best of them. But as you guys are dealing with the public and with the situations, you'll see me sitting here, mum's the word, right? You know, I really won't be saying anything. And that's kind of on purpose so that it can never be construed as, well, the mayor directed them to make this decision here, there, whatever, you know what I mean, and have it come back to bite us.
The one other thing up there is it must be based on evidence that came forward as part of the hearing process. So if you have a planning report or a review from the engineer that says the streets can handle the traffic from this development, someone standing up at the hearing and saying, I don't think this can handle that, it's not gonna be sufficient. They would need to provide some form of documentation that is adequate to refute what either the developer's engineer says or what the city's engineer says, because it needs to be qualified evidence. And then we like findings to be as specific as possible. You know, that's why we don't generally boilerplate. I was on a call today where we know a city council is going to approve a variance that nobody agrees with and should in no way be approved. So the only way we can write findings for this is, you know, where the line says this variance is consistent with the intent of the plan. The finding is this variance is consistent with the intent of the plan. It has no specificity or anything. It's just, well, we're going to approve this. So, but that gives, again, the city the ability to stand up a decision and say, no, this is why we did this. We looked at these specific reasons and said, this is consistent with the comprehensive plan, complies with the ordinance for these reasons. This is, again, based on conditions, reasonable relationship. The second bullet's an interesting one. So cities are always better off approving an application with conditions than denying an application. If you approve it, you've told the developer, yep, you can do this. You have to meet these conditions, and provided the conditions are reasonable, then that puts the burden on them to say, well, I can either do this with these conditions or I'm not gonna do it. Because if it goes to court, then they can say, the city said you can do it and they have these reasonable conditions. Whether you like them or not, that's it. If you deny it, that's just a higher bar to cross, that you've said, no way, you can't do this at all. There's nothing you can do that's gonna make this work. So I've seen it where cities will actually have their planning commission always make the motion to approve an application. And then if the majority feels that they don't want to approve it, they vote against that motion. The motion fails. So then it just basically goes to the council without a recommendation for approval. Under the law, that is in fact a denial without actually denying it. If that happens, the people voting against it do have to state on the record why they are voting against it, but it's kind of a sneaky way around it. Let's see. So then when we're talking about conditions, and again, for the most part, these are going to be written out in the report ahead of time. We try and be as comprehensive as possible in writing them to cover all bases. That's why every application that comes to you says all grading, drainage, erosion control, and wetland issues shall be subject to review by the city engineer. We just attach this broad statement to say, because something invariably is going to come up after the fact, and the engineer is going to need to be sure that it complies. I think the next one says, you know, those are just examples. So we want to be very specific as to what the conditions are. Typically, you always want to also attach who's responsible for making sure the conditions met. So you want to say subject to review and approval by the zoning administrator, the city attorney, the city engineer, et cetera, so that, you know, it doesn't leave it open-ended as to who's going to decide whether the conditions are met or not. We also never say who's may or should. The applicant should install evergreen trees down this property line. No, they must, or they shall, so that it's very specific. And then also, they shall install these trees based on the requirements of section of the zoning ordinance requiring screening, so that, you know, it points to the reasonableness of the requirement. So these are just examples of things that you could attach as conditions, you know, traffic, screening, exterior lighting or noise, anything pertaining to stormwater drainage, building architecture. For now, you can still kind of address that. Property maintenance requirements, a lot of times, fast food, for example, you put a stipulation in there that they must maintain the site daily for trash and rubbish, to have somebody go out there and pick it up. Anything pertaining to signs, hours of operation is a common one. If a business requires a state license, you can insert that as part of their conditional use permit, that they must maintain the license. And then anything basically that falls under that umbrella, cities like to throw around of protecting public health, safety, and welfare. That's the zoning ordinance in a nutshell. Any questions? So the subdivision ordinance is a lot easier. It's basically a how-to manual. How do I take this 40-acre piece and subdivide it into smaller pieces? So you're dividing raw land into something that can be built upon. It's kind of follows behind the zoning ordinance because it's all based on compliance with the standards set in the zoning ordinance. And then it also deals with how streets and stormwater public utilities get built and paid for as part of new development. So the initial design of a subdivision is laid out as part of what's called a preliminary plat, which what it means. It's preliminary design. That'll show you the lot layout, the right-of-way, where the streets will be to serve the development. They'll have a preliminary grading plan and stormwater management calculations demonstrating compliance with local and MPCA rules. Each lot needs to identify septic and well locations, and then they'll address whether land's going to be dedicated to the city for parks. That is, again, it's a city decision. The developer doesn't get to decide whether they dedicate land or pay a cash fee. When a preliminary plat criteria or application comes in, there are criteria in the subdivision ordinance that basically allow the city to decide whether it's premature or not. So again, consistency with the comprehensive plan, adequate waste disposal, adequate water supply, adequate stormwater management, roads, public service capacity, and consistency with capital improvement plans. One I'd highlight is that public service capacity in cities that have a lot of growth. And I know a lot of growth is relative term. I think some people might think there's a lot of growth in Baldwin, too much perhaps. So what you will hear at public hearings is, well, the city's doing all this growth, you know, the schools can't accommodate it. Schools are a separate jurisdiction, they're their own entity. You can't consider that. So it needs to be services specific to those provided by the city. And then the capital improvement plan is something that the city is developing. Basically, okay, this development is coming in. We know it's going to cause additional traffic on this street, but we also know that within 2 years, the city has in its plan that it's going to expand that street, be able to accommodate that. So as we also know that a subdivision is probably not going to go from no lots or no homes to 20 lots overnight. So as this builds out, we do have the ability to accommodate it within the plans that are adopted by the city. So the end of the preliminary plat process, again, that comes to the Planning Commission for review. Once that preliminary plat is approved by the council, that's basically saying, subdivider, you have the right now to proceed to subdivide the land and build these streets. So that is kind of the point of no return. So that's where the city needs to be judicious in applying those premature subdivision criteria and putting any conditions of approval on it. You must remove the temporary cul-de-sac that abuts the property. You must install a turn lane on 305th Street to access this development so that that gets incorporated in plans going forward. Once they have that, then they proceed to the final plat stage, which is basically putting that subdivision in the construction plans in final form. That's the lot layout, and then on the lots, there's drainage and utility easements, typically overlaying stormwater ponds. Those are dedicated to the public for use and maintenance going forward. The right-of-way for streets, which is property where the street is located, with the ditches on either side, dedicated to the public. They provide construction plans in detailed form to the city engineer to approve. And then there's also a development contract the city attorney drafts. Basically says you're going to record this plat to subdivide the property. You're going to undertake construction as shown on the plans and complete it typically within one construction season, with the exception of streets are built in 2 layers. You don't put the top layer of asphalt on until after 1 year. There are city fees that are collected as part of a subdivision process that basically help offset the city's cost to administer that contract. With construction of streets, for example, the city engineer goes out and inspects that work and also observes it as it's happening to make sure it's done in accordance with city plans. And then the other thing they provide is a security. So, for example, if they have to build a street within the development, they provide the cost to build that street, the plans to design that street, plus the cost to inspect and oversee that in the form of either a cash escrow or what's called a letter of credit from a bank that basically guarantees that money. And that allows the city that should the developer fail halfway through the project, the city can draw that money to go out and complete those improvements. The issue is obviously you've created all these lots out here that are dependent on the infrastructure, so you want to be sure it's completed and followed through. Lessons learned from the Great Recession were how to make that letter of credit as secure as possible and easy for the city to access. Even through the recession, I think I only saw 1 or 2 securities claimed, but there was lots of kind of shady forms of security going on where a lot of cities were left with half-completed developments and no way to finish out that infrastructure. So that's something that has gotten a lot of attention, and the city requires basically over and above what the cost of that is to make sure there's adequate funds available. We changed the subdivision ordinance from what Sherburne County had. Statute doesn't require a planning commission to review final plats, simply because if it looks like the preliminary plat and they sign the development contract, then there's no reason not to approve it. Most cities will put final plat applications on the consent agenda, which means the council approves it without discussion. I don't know that we've had any plats that have gone so smoothly that we've been able to do that yet, but at some point. I wasn't going to say anything. So as we're doing all these reviews, we hear a lot of times at public hearings, why has this suddenly come out of nowhere, and why is everybody in such a rush to move this through this process? Developers will meet with city staff ahead of time to learn what the rules are and finalize their plans. Once they submit plans to the city, there's 2 statutes that basically say the city has a defined amount of time to hold the public hearing, make a recommendation to the council, and for the council to act. For zoning requirements and most everything other than subdivisions, it's Minnesota statutes 1599, which is known as the 60-day rule. It says that once the city receives a complete application, it must make a decision within 60 days. If for whatever reason the city can't make a decision within that time frame, it can extend it another 60 days of its own initiative. Otherwise, any other additional extensions need consent of the applicant. If the city fails to act upon a decision within that timeline, the request is automatically approved as presented. No conditions, no anything. So that is one of those things that city planners live in fear of having happen. That's why on our reports, we list what the 60-day date is so that it's front and center as we're working on these things. And typically what we will do is change that to say the 120-day date if we've sent the letter to the applicant explaining that we're going to extend that. Subdivisions are a little different. Preliminary plats by statute are 120 days. There's no ability to extend that unless, again, the applicant would agree to it. And then final plats are just a 60-day turnaround again because that's a fairly straightforward process. We kind of manipulate the process a bit because cities do have 15 days from when materials are submitted to decide if it's complete or not. You can almost always find a reason that they haven't submitted something and then send them a notice saying this is incomplete. For these reasons, please submit this information to complete the application. For the most part, we will work with information that hasn't been submitted as we're doing our reviews. We're trying to work with developers to expedite them through the process as much as possible. So unless it's something significantly major, we're not going to delay them unnecessarily. But these were basically put in place because cities, in order to not act upon something they didn't want to approve, would basically put it on the shelf and just say, oh yeah, we haven't had a meeting or the agenda's full. So that basically kind of expedites the process, and it's something that's not necessarily understood by the public and why sometimes from their side of the table everything feels kind of rushed through. That's all I got. So, questions? Someone besides Ed got a question? I should say we would like to do this kind of on a regular basis just because it's helpful to the planning commission members, even those that have been here a long time. Helpful for me too. Just to kind of go through it.
Dan, Will you provide like handouts for the
Yep.
planning commission?
Yep. We can just print the PowerPoint and send it, so. Yep. I think the city attorney and I did one of these not long after we both were working here. Mike and Bob had been here, but not long after I started, it was a joint meeting. But it's been a while.
Binder?
Yeah. It's been a while, so, and like I said, with all the turnover, it was just timely to do it, so.
Chair, speaking of that, Dan, Clarence, would you think about, there was a lot of time with the other members put into the SWOT, Patty, you remember SWOT, that we did over the comprehensive plan and land use and those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
We have so many new members at this point in time. Would it be worthwhile to start that over again, or at least some portions of it?
So I was going to get to that under my update. So one of the things the planning commission has been working on is the comprehensive plan update. They were pretty much through all kind of the issues identification and policy drafting part of it. So my thought is for the January meeting, what we will do is kind of bring the draft document and go through it in great detail, if we have to go page by page, so that, you know, we can look at what the planning commission discussed as the issues before the community and the opportunities before the community previously, and with your new perspectives, add to that, change it, you know, and then we can basically make adjustments to what everyone had done in the past. And they hadn't gotten to the point of actually seeing the plan text. They had drawn the maps, but not seeing the wording that backs it up. So I think if we do that in January, that would give us the opportunity again to review again in February. Ideally, we would have a community meeting March, and then move to adopt in April, which coincides with the moratorium that's in place.
I think that's what I was asking about earlier, is how far along had you gotten?
Yeah.
I think that's an excellent idea because with basically. So.
Yep. Yeah, we kind of stopped and started as members were dropping away. Now everyone left us, so.
We kept going and we had it when the city and everything was there, things we had on that we were working on, we kind of pushed some things back, and so doing a lot of this. That January and go from there. That was kind of a concern, was where the comprehensive plan is at and all the knowledge that has went out the door.
Right.
Where it's at, their input, and then
Yep.
Mr. Chair, would that be at the January 14th meeting then, the special meeting?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
How often do you think we should do that?
If no one changes over, we could probably wait until January 27. So no one go anywhere. I mean, you'll obviously pick up on it as,
We'll see how it sticks.
yeah, it'll go in practice, so. And, you know, during the special meetings especially is a good time to ask questions about things. That meeting is, I've learned, is more intended for open discussion by the planning commission than specific agenda items, so.
Do you have anything for Dan before we go?
I have some questions, but they're related to not necessarily Dan, but the meeting in general. Okay. Mr. Chair, out of respect for the chair, when is the proper time to use the title when we're speaking? The mayor does a very good job at it. Every time he opens his mouth, it's Mr. Chair. I know the first couple of meetings that I did it, but then I kind of lost track of, so my question is, what is the right time? Or is it all the time when we're addressing? It's like, are we addressing, if we want to talk to Dan, are we saying Mr. Chair and then refer to Dan? I think that's kind of how it's started.
Every time, and
Okay.
it's also when people are standing there asking questions when there's a public hearing, they are to address me, even though they're talking to all of us. At the point, and the big point of that is then they're addressing me, they're not turning to talk to the person.
Okay.
So,
Because that was the second part, is in public meetings with the general public. So when we're addressing the public, are we Mr. Chair and then asking the questions as well? Okay. So when we're in special meetings like this, are we still, is that the proper format of, is this a more of a casual, we're working on stuff, or is it still the formal, Mr. Chair, I have this question?
still formal.
Okay.
I am guilty, and I've admitted it, where a lot of times in this meeting, I'll say, oh, you'll just say something like Ed, and I'll just say Ed rather than Commissioner Stoffren, which is the proper way that I'm to address all of you, is not by your first name. So, but yes, it is, what you're saying is proper to,
I'm just trying to, I mean, I'm questioning, but at the same point, it's, with all the new people, let's set the standard of this is how we're supposed to do it, this is what we're doing. Bruce started out real fine with his addressing, Mr. Chair, so that's great. I felt the first meeting or so I did it, I was really good about it, but I've kind of blown it since then. Next question. When asking questions, what is the proper time? I mean, I try to raise my hand to let the person finish and then have them address me and say, okay, I'm done with what I'm talking about, what's your question? So what is the proper time to ask questions? And then as well as when, the second half of that is when the public attends. And we have, at that point, we have questions to ask of the public. How do we make it known that we have the question?
generally we open up and I'll say at the step in the public hearing, where then I'll say, okay, does anyone have any questions? And then I open it up to all of us to speak. Then if you have something, you can simply, and if you can either raise your hand if you're waiting just to signify that you do have something somewhere. And then if I'll see it, if I have to be looking this way and you have something, you can always just say, Chair, and then I'd say yes.
Okay.
Typically in that situation, the big thing that we don't like is if somebody else is talking, we don't like people to be talking over.
Yep.
Or interrupting, even if you are 100% against it or you're even want to correct it. Generally, Dan is also, when something comes up, he'll say, oh, Mr. Chair, and he'll correct somebody if they're off. But if it's a correction, it's okay, but otherwise butting in, it's like just.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So we do put this procedure on the back of the agenda for people during the public hearings in order to kind of outline the process so that people sitting out there have an idea what's going on. The important part is they need to know when they get the chance to make comments. I think we've had it a couple of times where the public hearing has been closed and then someone in the audience wants to speak. No, I'm sorry, you had your chance to speak, you made your comment, we heard it. The important thing, public hearings aren't meant to be an opportunity for the public to come debate the planning commission. They can comment, they can make a question, and then you take that information in. You can return it back to the applicant, you can discuss it amongst yourselves, and make that part of your decision-making process.
I think I asked this, but when we address the public with a question, are we asking, do we address it through you, or do we? So you're saying
You say, Mr. Chair, and then you'll just turn to the person and you would ask.
Okay. All right. And then the other question I had regarding the meeting in general, what would be the difference between new business and the commissioner update? The new business would be on the agenda
Have to
that was already been identified as new business. And then if we have something new as a commissioner, we would do it during the commissioner update.
Or if you bring something up as well, it's like, oh, good point. Then we could turn to Kayla and say, Kayla, can we get that on the next something? Or else if with the mayor here, we can also say, well, that might be something, and then he can give his input or about that, we're looking into that.
Okay.
Mr. Chair. So the perfect example of that was the discussion about storage containers. The planning commission wasn't considering action on that. You wanted to raise it as an issue. Should we put that on an agenda for discussion? That's what the update section's more.
Okay. Again, part of it's for me, but also it's for the new people that haven't seen this yet, or maybe they have and they're just getting refreshed. Okay, that finishes my questions. Thank you.
Anyone else have anything? Okay, thank you again, Mr. Lick, appreciate it very much. Okay, under new business, EQ, in front of you, you have the Planning Commission 2026 meeting schedule. You will notice for the couple of you who had meetings this year, we used to do it the third and fourth Wednesdays. And due to a change with the city council, you want the first and third.
Mr. Chair, we hijacked your meetings.
Correctamundo.
Yes. So, and with staff and with some other things too, you know, they have a better availability on Wednesdays for us to do that. And it was rather impressive, actually, when we set our 2026 calendar. We could roll through the entire year, whatever. We didn't have to displace a meeting or turn one off because of a holiday or these kind of things, whatever. So that worked very well. And knowing that you guys met on Wednesdays anyway, hoped bumping your special meetings a week earlier wouldn't be necessarily a problem.
There's a pro. The pro and the con is getting used to doing the third and fourth. Oh, she get used to it. It's a habit. So now switching it.
18 years I've been doing Mondays, so.
But the nice thing is the pro of it is a lot of times when someone has something and you say, come to the next meeting, it is, and a lot of times it's hard. Whatever, well, now knowing that we're every other Wednesday and you're the
So now I will have a meeting every Wednesday.
Wednesday. Hey, show up next Wednesday at such and such.
Exactly.
Your meetings do not differ. Ours, we have a special and then we have a regular. Your meetings, the first and third, are the same.
Correct.
Okay. And for knowledge, so just someone says something, are they always at our meeting on there? Is it always going to be your next meeting to put them on, or do you, for some reason, need to give them 2 or 3 weeks?
Sure. We can assume that it would go to the next one.
Okay.
If it won't, for whatever reason, I will tell you.
Okay.
Sometimes we have to have an agreement prepared between planning commission and council. So we have to give the city attorney time to do that. Let staff review it and then let the developer review it.
All of our publics will be on the 4th Wednesday, so I'll always be saying first Wednesday next month.
Correct.
So, but it's like, I don't want to say that and assume that it's correct. If case, if there's a by law, it needs a 2-week window. I think you said if you correct me, so, okay.
And for the most part, Mr. Chair, that won't change the way things have been, because your fourth meeting, the fourth Wednesday is usually the meeting when you're making decisions like that, sending them to the council. And so in this case, it was the first Monday meeting for the council to take action. It'll be the first Wednesday meeting instead.
So, and I do notice, and everybody else noticed as well, the November TBD 26 special, under the special column, second from the last, is a TBD because the planning commission meeting, that one is the 18th, because the 25th is the day before Thanksgiving, and we really, so the TBD would be one where we might have to sneak it in somewhere else. We might have to come in later. We'll figure that one out. So that is the big thing there, is we're not going to try to interrupt holidays. And the notes on the December meetings after the 2026, the meetings in December will be only scheduled if needed. And the last thing you presented with the days, we have 30 days, 60 days. If something comes up and we could not get it into November and we can't wait until January, we'd have to have a December meeting. So that would be a case of where we have that. So if everybody would look that over and entertain a motion to approve and accept.
I'll make a motion to approve and accept the updated 2026 Baldwin Planning Commission meeting schedule as written.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
For discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, it is approved. We can put that on our calendars for next year. Perfect. Okay, that brings us to F, old business. We have none. G, comprehensive plan update. We have nothing scheduled for tonight. As Mr. Lick stated, we will be diving into that in our special meeting on January 14th of 2026. H, city council liaison update. For the new people, Commissioner West and Commissioner Larson, the big thing, as the mayor mentioned earlier, is they are our liaison. So it's really nice because a lot of stuff that we talk about here, he'll come back and say, he might have something to comment about that, or else he kind of lets us know what's going on out there as well. So it kind of gives us a window into their world, what they're seeing as well. So on that note, Mr. Swanson.
Nothing, no, I'm kidding. I was gonna talk about.
Yeah.
I'm gonna talk about the calendar, we already did that, and the meeting changes and those kind of things. The one thing that we've been working on is that council whatnot has been the budget. We've had several meetings and discussions about the budget. It is set, our truth and taxation meeting is gonna be December 1st at our council meeting. And what we have decided on, so as a township, we've all been in the township for all these years, and we had annual meetings, and we rolled in the budget, we did this kind of thing. The change from the way we used to do it to the way we do it now is, we're not gonna have an annual meeting. Right, as a city, we're not gonna have annual meetings. So the way to roll out the budget to the people is called truth and taxation, and that's gonna happen at our meeting, like I said, on December. And so that is when people will be able to come in, we'll open the floor, they'll be able to ask questions, throw their pitchforks at us, whatever it is they want to do. Those kind of things, whatever it takes, we'll try and answer all the questions. What happens here that's different, as a township, remember, now if we were still a township at this point in time, we would actually be planning an annual meeting in March, but we would also be talking about the budget for 2027. Because the people would have already approved the budget, if you will, for 2026. So what's different now is this December 1st meeting is going to present the budget and approvals at that meeting for the 2026 budget. So in other words, what this allows us to do, if you will, is live the entire year on the budget of 2025, see where we really need to be, and make a more accurate projection to what we need to have on the 26th. So that's extremely helpful. The caveat to that is, I think it's by September 30th, we have to have a preliminary budget that actually is sent to the county so that everybody can get their tax statements and put on. And that number, if you see that for the Baldwin portion of the taxes, whatever, is extremely high, because we don't have any chance after we've quote, projected that preliminary budget or submitted the preliminary budget numbers to go any higher than that if something comes up, but we can always go lower. So what we have always been accustomed to as a board is trying to be about as low as possible, which is why we're at where we're at now with the taxes and the things that we do. However, what we had to, we portrayed preliminarily was a 15% increase. Right, so now you will see that number on all of your tax statements and things like that, as a 15% increase. So throughout deliberations and the processes, whatever, we have actually been able to beat that down to about 8% now, and that's what we're going to project and show on the December 1st. And so what that does is it's about $28 per average home, and obviously we know how the values and things change that, whatever, but that's what the taxes are ultimately going to go up. That I wanted to say, and then also too, we had Brad Schumacher. We know he's our county commissioner, right? He came in at our meeting the other night, and if you're looking at your tax statements and things like that here, there's a line on here that nobody could answer. What is the special taxing district total? Right, so if you're looking at that, or if people know, that is for the airport. I would call it St. Cloud Airport, but the airport that's in Sherburne County, west, just south of St. Cloud. So when you see this number, the special taxing district, if you will, that is the airport.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so ultimately, basically at this point in time, Sherburne County is, their contributions to that is about $460,000 a year. And of course, divided by all of us in Sherburne County, that's what that is. obviously according to your value and those types of things, whatever. Other than that, I have nothing.
Have you had any, because I know a big concern when we were gonna 15%, like a good number. Because if you went in escrow, you go 50, because you know, you're something with a house. 'cause
Yes.
it's way more than you need. But if you went even 25 or 30 people, you might get calls saying, hey, what is this?
Well,
Have you
and
had any yet?
that was, no, I have not had any. I don't know, Mr. Holmes here, you can ask him if he's had some too, whatever, but, I have not had any, calls about that. The one thing that, happened, as we move forward now, especially as a city, as we presented our budget, sorry, I don't know how to start this conversation, but as we presented our budget, we usually had a line item for all of the funds that we did, right? So we had the road and bridge fund, we had the fire fund, we had a capital fire fund for equipment, a capital maintenance fund for capital equipment, those kind of things, whatever, da. And then we funded those according to what we believed needed to be. Well, since we've become a city, for bonding purposes, for purposes moving forward, the general fund actually is the huge big ticket fund, if you will, that creditors, lenders, bonding houses and things like look at. And they're asking for 40 to 50% carryover from year to year. And if we can't show that, whatever, you know, the cost of bonding, borrowing money, these kind of things is gonna go up, right? And so now the other part to keep in mind too is we will not see our first payment for our 2026 dollars from the county until July. So when we think our calendar year is our budget year, that's true. But when we actually start January 1, we're still, this year, 26, we're still living on 25 money. And those dollars need to carry over. So we've done considerable changes with the coding and the way things have happened in the budget to put this more towards the general fund, if you will. So that could possibly be some confusion for the people because they're not used to seeing it that way. You know what I mean? And so I think that we'll be able to get past that. So yes, we spent a lot of time deliberating on where the dollars go, obviously what they're going to be used for, you know what I mean? But also trying to compartmentalize them into these similar funds that people are used to seeing, because to me, that's transparency and that makes a lot of sense. Right? And so we kind of battled. So we have an auditor, we pay an outfit to audit us every year. That's by statute, that has to happen. The auditor had some input on what the funds were and what the line items and all should be. It helps to coordinate with them some because the next audit won't be, say, more expensive than what the previous one was. You know what I mean? Because they have an idea for that now. Our accountant, we use Ellers for the financial planning and accountant and those kind of things, whatever. And she is phenomenal. So working with her, we've got things changed into what the outside world is going to look at a city budget and expect to see. You know, because we did it differently, but it had worked. So we had some trials and tribulations, a few battles. Yes, trying to keep the taxes low. The one thing that happens is in order to bolster the general fund to look as appropriate as it needs to the outside world, there needed to be some increases into that, part of the 8%, you know, and so the one thing we had looking at projections into 26 and 27 and 28 and that kind of thing, if we had gone up the 15% that we had ultimately done in 26, then we possibly could have only went up 1 or 2 points in 27. So the thought of the council was, let's not do that, let's average this out so we don't have big hits, right? And do this in 26 and then have a similar increase projected at this moment. We don't know what that is a year from now, if you know what I mean, to do similar things, whatever, in 27. That was the philosophy behind it.
Thank you very much, sir.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Question for the mayor. Talking about the budget and truth and taxation, so when everything is, everything is said and done, will that be posted, the budget, posted on the city's website?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, on to I, Commissioner Update. We'll start with the experienced ones, who've been here several months. We'll start with Commissioner Barnes. Do you have anything?
Not at this moment. I think we're good so far. I appreciate Dan and the reviews and the information that he's given us and keeping us on the same page. I like
Yeah.
very well together on the same page. Forward from here. I like the city and where it's going.
Suffering.
I think I've asked enough questions.
Fair?
Yeah, I won't be at the January 14th meeting.
Okay.
I planned my vacation around the 3rd and 4th Wednesday. I'm like, darn it.
I know.
I was like, okay.
It's true. I did that too. And one time, a couple times I've had it where it just hasn't worked out for
Yeah.
graduation or something.
Yep.
You can't get around it.
I'm
but
like,
it's
well, okay. Otherwise, that is it.
Can you, Kayla, make a note of that? Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Just by way of that, and regarding attendance for the planning commission, it's very important for the new members that when we schedule a meeting, we have at least 4 people show up. So that if you're not able to attend a meeting, please let Kayla know in advance. Especially if we have the regular meetings where we need to send public hearing notices and such. It can be a problem if suddenly we get to the meeting and we don't have 4 commissioners.
Very good point. So yes, thank you for letting us know.
Otherwise, every day is good. I've got it on my calendar now.
For both the new ones, basically this time, anything like we've kind of stated, if you have questions, comments, and a lot of times it's just, nope, I have nothing, but just to let you know that this is basically your time to just say whatever you have on your mind. So I will start with you, Commissioner Larson. Do you have anything?
I would like to thank Commissioner Stoffren for his questions tonight because they put me in a path of, yeah, I would have thought of asking that, especially when it comes to how to address people. So thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, nothing. Thank you.
And saving her for last, Commissioner Miller.
Well, I just want to say I'm very grateful for having the opportunity to serve on the Planning Commission. I always found it very interesting when our mayor would give us the updates on different issues coming up. Really love that. Appreciate the way our chairman runs our meetings. Good job.
Thank you.
And Mr. Licht provides such invaluable information on his staff reports that really helps us review things and make our decisions. So thanks, everybody. And we got a good board sitting here now, too. Awesome. So thank you.
Thank you.
For you, you pass that down, please. Thank you very much for everything you've did. I mean, from the moment you came on, you had experience, but you've always given very valuable input. You've always been here. Everything you did things outside of here with Sherry when you were doing things with her. That's greatly appreciated. Just everything you did, it's been just an absolute pleasure getting to know you as a person, because you're a very good person. So you're going to be missed.
I have to tell you something funny. I was going through my packet and I was going through all the dates to make sure they were correct. And I bought a new planner, right? A 26 planner. And I was going January through June, check, check, check. Then I got July and I was like, oh, wait a minute, these dates aren't correct. My planner is incorrect. They put the wrong year.
Really?
So who do I tell?
Oh. At least it wasn't us.
But thank you very much. I have nothing because Mr. Lick pretty much touched the big thing. I was going to actually ask about the comprehensive plan, but you already discussed where we're at. So that was the big thing, to get all of us at the same starting point. So this was really good. I really like this. This was good. I mean, when I started, I had very little knowledge, and there were times Brian was here before the mayor was, and there was a couple meetings where I went to him afterward and I said, I don't want to just keep asking questions because I'm learning so much of this. I said, what do I do? He's like, no, ask if you have to ask. So I would ask, and sometimes I'd write down, I'd have so many questions, I'd write down a few, and after the meeting, I'd be like, Brian, and I'd ask him the questions then. So having all this information presented to us is nice, because whether you know it or not, but just also to refresh you, know how things work outside of here. Stated with Brian and now the mayor, this is so important because it lets us know what's going on. December 1st meeting, the truth and the taxation, all of that. That's so good for us to know. If we don't see it somewhere and we go, oh, shoot, I would have liked to have seen that. Or someone asks us stuff, it's nice because this is so important because we can say, oh, it's that date. Now we know, so it makes us look better as well.
Welcome, my pleasure.
Yeah. So to echo your sentiments you started with was we have a very good group here. So it's like this is fun. It's fun to be part. I came on board as things were just kind of getting rolling, and all of a sudden we're becoming a city. Now we're a city, and now we're rolling from here. So this is really an exciting time. So that brings us to Jay, city staff update. Mr. Lick.
So, Mr. Chair, just to kind of follow up on what you said, for those that don't know, the mayor's role here is basically to take your discussions and communicate them to the council. When something goes from here to them, I update my report to reflect your decisions. And then he's there to make sure I don't fib or miss anything.
Hard job too, I tell you.
So that just helps the communication so that it keeps the planning commission in alignment with, what the council's doing, and the council understands what you're doing as well. And to what the chair said, I have to tell you that coming to Baldwin Planning Commission meetings, and largely due to people like Miss Miller, I can't tell you how much I look forward to it. I've been doing this a long time, and this group is outstanding, and all the new people that are here really bring something to the table. So it's always fun to come. Now, I do have one thing to bring up quickly. So I've been talking to a resident. Let's see, why am I not getting there? It is. Owns this property. It consists of a number. It's this house, this accessory building, and this one. Wants to put another accessory building basically here. Would require a variance because this building is 30 feet from the property line, 50 feet is required. So this is obviously a non-conforming condition. Obviously also has plenty of space where you could build a building, but doesn't want to, basically wants to keep it orderly and keep it in line. Now, I said there's two ways you can look at this. One is, no way, you just have to meet the ordinance. That's what the ordinance says. This building shouldn't be where it is. The other would be is to say, well, this building's already 30 feet. If he builds another one here, that's not any closer. It's not increasing the degree of nonconformity, but it is adding a structure. So, that would be a challenge to the criteria to some extent, but I said I would raise it to the planning commission. The other issue that goes with this is the person is anxious to come before the planning commission because cost increases that would go into effect by waiting till January, even though they're not building it. So if you were open to the idea of considering that variance, I'd ask if there's the ability to have a special meeting on the 15th at 6 prior to the council meeting in order to move that forward for them. Yes.
Basically, Mr. Chair, so it's basically so he gets the same day approval. He's gonna, we would recommend
You'd
it
hold
to
the
the city
hearing and then
council,
it would go to the city council the same night,
and then the same night it would go to city council and allow them to decide.
recognizing the holidays and schedules and everything.
So state that again. We would have a meeting that
6,
at 6.
and the council meets at 7.
Good.
But I would say we would only go to that effort if planning commission was indicating willingness to consider.
Free discussion.
Okay, this is kind of the case of when we spoke earlier about some of the houses, when someone has something on Elk Lake and there's 2 houses here and here, and this person wants to build here where now they're all in line. So we're issuing a variance because it's like they want it to be uniform. just stated something to that effect. Here now, a person has all that space and it's only 20 feet legal. So how does everybody feel?
Mr. Chair? Earlier, we talked about need versus want. He's got, this person has plenty of space. It's not like, just what you said on Elk Lake. So I'm just gonna, personally, I would say the need versus want. I think it's pretty clear that I wouldn't think it should happen.
And if the previous one was non-conforming, is that what you said? Then what, I would think, why would we
Approved.
do that again? I would say no.
I would agree with Commissioner Miller. We allowed one and it's non-conforming. Why would we say, oh, good old guy, do it again?
When was that issued, that non-conforming?
Well, it would have had to predate the ordinance, so I don't know how it got where it is, basically. I haven't looked into it that far.
As that would have been my question, is, my guess is it was built before the regulation existed, like with a lot of the structures on the lake.
Which is why they're non-conforming, because they were built prior to the ordinance.
I mean, it's a unique situation in of itself that it's a building on a lot without a house on it, so that's a no-no as well, so.
Well, and that's where I was, so there were a couple questions I had. Again, do we have an ordinance that limits the amount of accessory buildings a property can have? And you brought up it's an accessory building without a house, which is a no-no.
So this, we would require they combine the lots if that went forward.
Okay.
Okay.
And do we have a number of accessory structures that they can have?
No.
Okay,
You can have as many up to 4% of the lot area.
okay. The other question is, are they asking for additional access?
No.
I mean, it looks like there's a street, so were they wanting additional driveways or?
No, not at this time. The way it stands now, they'd be entitled to another driveway.
Because it's another parcel, but if
But
we're
if we combine
requiring them
it,
to
yeah.
combine. Sorry, I'm.
Looks like it's war on the middle. You can see where there's a path where they've driven there. You can see the paths where they drive,
Yeah.
so. I echo all your sentiments. I don't think that we should grant a variance because it's a want. I'd like to do this so it matches. I mean, that looks nice and your buildings are the same distance back, so it does look nice. So there is the thought of that. It's like, it's nice they thought that, but to grant it, we're granting what they want. It's not all.
That's all I need.
And the other building is offset because it's smaller.
Yeah,
So,
or so, yeah.
Yeah.
To have a conformity is, it's not there already. It's already offset. So why would an offset be a problem?
So, Mr. Chair, this was actually a test to see if anyone paid attention during the training session, so good job.
Apparently you pass.
No, I'm kidding. This was a legit question from a resident.
Mr. Chair, that's a picture from another state. Dan wanted to see
Why are
if,
there palm trees on there?
wanted to see if we were awake.
If we were away.
Also saved me from having to show up at 6 o'clock.
Okay.
I love it.
Okay, that brings us to K, miscellaneous information and communications. Below notes 1 through 4, there'll always be stuff there for Commissioner West and Commissioner Larson. There'll be things there that will always pertain when we speak of K. It brings us to L. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Beautiful. Do you have a second? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. 8:43, meeting adjourned. Thank you very much. Everyone have a